world's a stage and all the men and women are merely players. Hello again everyone, it's Sarah here, ready to bring you another review. This time we're covering The Smashing Machine, a dramatic biopic based on the life of MMA fighter Mark Kerr and his struggles with fame, fortune and drugs and alcohol. Before we begin though, please give us a like, share and subscribe to the channel. Okay, that's it. The gloves are off, let's get into the ring. I'm a fan of biopics in general, however I usually stick to major historical events or figures, not so much feel-good sports dramas or inspiring athlete ones. However, what caught my eye initially on this one is while I was watching the trailer I had this uncanny feeling I know that actor. Upon a rewatch it hit me, is that Dwayne Johnson? Now say what you like about The Rock, while in more recent years he's pretty much just played himself in various action films, just raking in that cash, but when he started off his career, he was actually pretty talented. Films like Be Good really showed his range and ability to lose himself in a role, and play strongly against his normal persona. I read up on Mark Kerr and everything pointed to this guy being a gentle giant, but with some real demons in his closet, and so I was curious to see if Dwayne Johnson could take this role on and if it would reach the heights of other athlete-centered flicks like The Wrestler or I, and Tonya. And surprisingly, it was pretty good. While The Rock delivers a solid performance in the lead role, Emily Blunt really knocks it out of the park as Kerr's then wife Dawn Staples. The film is an interesting mix of drama and fact, and while most of these types of films are meant to inspire or tell a cautionary tale, this film is strangely neither, just a kind of matter-of-fact description of what it was like to be part of this MMA world. It does have this gritty, almost guerrilla style to the way the film is shot, like it wants to be a fast-paced, over-the-top action documentary, but also in the quieter moments the camera moves softer and the music is much more cinematic. Okay, spoilers are inbound. I'll give you a moment to skip to the timestamp on screen if you wish to avoid any. Okay, still here? Time for round 2. Just so everyone's aware, this film deals with addiction, mental health, suicide and self-harm. This film begins with a flashback to 1997 in Brazil, Mark's first professional fight against Paul Veralens. The fight lasts about 2 minutes, with Kerr being victorious, delivering a flurry of punches and knee strikes, taking down his opponent. His next 2 opponents suffered pretty much the same fate, with instructor Mestre Hulk losing 2 teeth in the process, and finally an almost 30-minute long fight against Jiu-Jitsu master Fabio Gorgal. Even though Kerr had a broken hand during his last bout, he easily had over 50 pounds over Gorgal, which allowed him to take any hits and keep delivering some punishment. For his size, he was a surprisingly slippery, agile fighter. We get a voiceover by Kerr talking about what it was like to be in the ring and what it's like to get hit, and how about 90% is will and power and only 10% is physical. We then cut to Birmingham, Alabama a few weeks later. He's now a part of the official UFC fighting circuit, no longer just a wrestler getting his feet wet. One thing I like about these kinds of films, especially when it comes to fighters, they show that while in the locker room these guys are cool with each other, most of them respecting each other's skills, sharing bottles of water and training gear and whatnot. Nothing like those boxing rivalry movies like Southpaw or so, where the athletes just want to kill each other. No, it's more like when they enter the ring, a switch gets flipped and they go into professional mode. No longer friend, just opponent, and after the match it's all "what's up bro?" We once again jump forward now to Arizona in 1999. Kerr is waiting in the doctor's office to get some cuts over his eye checked out, when a kid curiously asks him about it. He just kindly explains it to the kid, teaching him about the sport, but that in real life you shouldn't hit anyone. Disagreements can always be solved with words. He then signs an autograph for the kid before being called into the doctor's office. I cannot stress how mild-mannered he is about everything, even when dealing with his health insurance. We do also get a glimpse of what his life is like at home. His soon-to-be wife and her cat pretty much run the house and everything seems pretty loving. Dawn also helps him with his workouts, which occasionally drift into some little canoodling here and there. Then we see a bit of Kerr's other side, as we watch him inject himself with drugs like Nubain and morphine. At this point, Kerr was well into his addiction, which had actually started with Vicodin and then progressed from then on. Kerr eventually graduated to fighting overseas in Japan for Pride, a very elite fighting championship with hundreds of different styles of martial arts belonging to very proud schools. Now, up until now, Kerr has never lost a fight. He's undefeated through and through. While he may be a gentle and well-mannered person, he's never had to really deal with defeat of any kind. When one of the reporters asks him about it, it really confuses him a little bit, breaking his focus. To make matters worse, because he's trying to get in the zone, when Dawn shows up, she starts an argument about it, and he tries to explain to her that he needs to get out of his own head, but she goes off like a little firecracker she is. I mean, to be fair, if I was about to enter a bare knuckle, no pads fight with a dude looking to land some pain on me, I too would be trying to focus and not want to deal with any other shit at that moment. But whatever. The fight gets underway and Kerr gets his ass handed to him. A knockout. His first loss. Now, there was some debate about how the fight went down, as it was previously declared that knees to the top of the head were illegal moves, and that's how he was taken down. So technically, Kerr shouldn't have lost this match. Regardless, the behemoth is pissed, but somehow keeping his calm even when talking to the event manager. As the anxieties and the realisation of what just happened starts coming down on him, he looks for anywhere to be by himself and get control of himself. But it's all too much, and he sits down in the locker room and he just sobs hard. Poor guy. Later on, the manager informs Kerr that they've changed the ruling to no contest, basically opening it up for a rematch. No official winner is yet. Shortly afterwards, his opponent Branko stops by and the two actually share a warm conversation. He apologises for kneeing him in the head, but Kerr insists bygones be bygones, and the two even snap a picture together. Again, that's what just amazes me as I'm watching all of this, how kind Mark really is, how much of a gentle soul he has, and yet underneath is a raging sea of demons. Stateside, Kerr's addiction is really starting to ramp up as he seeks higher doses of stronger pain medication, anything he can inject into his body. Dawn is no dummy though, she knows something is up, especially when she finds him basically zombified in the living room in front of the TV. The relationship between them is super strained, but she clearly loves him. She tries to talk to him about it, but he deflects, getting very defensive. She then makes the mistake of telling him to get over his loss, and he stands up, walks in the kitchen, and literally rips the door off the frame and starts destroying shit, before calmly placing his breakfast plate in the sink and sitting down at the kitchen table. He then takes a deep breath and puts his arm around her to pull her close, and cries and apologises. He then retreats to the bathroom and shoots up again. When Dawn finds him, he's collapsed on the floor, unmoving, although alive. Dawn had called the ambulance. She then calls Coleman, Mark's trainer and best friend, because not only could she use the support, but this could also end his career if it ever gets out that he's an addict. Coleman goes in to see him, and while Mark tries to cook up a BS story about being sick and smacking his head or whatever, Coleman sees through it and tells him to cut it out. He loves him and he's here for him, and he'll see him through this. And Mark cries and hugs him tight. Mark says he just wants to die, and Coleman is taken back by this and hugs him tighter. Dawn, standing in the doorway, hears this and turns away, crying hard. He completes a stint at a rehab centre, while Coleman enters Pride for a fight event himself. Even though Kerr couldn't be there to cheer on his friend, Coleman wins his fight and gets back into the public eye. When Dawn goes to pick Mark up from the rehab facility, I laugh so hard because imagine a toy Barbie car, and then shoving in like a 10-inch He-Man figure. He's just so huge in her little Chrysler convertible. They spend the day at the carnival and it seems like things are better, but still there are moments when his eyes glaze over, like during the Destruction Derby, where all he's thinking about is getting back into the ring, feeling the cheers of the crowd and the adrenaline and all that. When she mentions that he would make a good dad, he gets in a huff about it and then complains about how she didn't trim the cactus right or that there's a leaf in the pool. Now personally, I've dealt with people who are addicts. I know that for a long time after going clean, they can be edgy and the withdrawal symptoms can nag at them, which causes a person to be a bit prickly to say the least. However, Dawn doesn't seem to really understand that and keeps poking the bear. I mean, she even gives him shit when he calls his sponsor, chastising him about him not being fun anymore and that he's turning into a big crybaby and just explodes on him. Oh, that's disgusting, lady. Absolutely disgusting. So yeah, people in relationships argue. It happens. As much as two people can love each other, you're not going to agree on everything. That's where communication is important and compromise. You gotta be able to say sorry and own up to your own shit. That being said, this relationship is clearly toxic. And it's not only her fault or his, as they clearly care about one another, but have wildly different ideas on what they want their lives to be. And this creates a major conflict, which in turn breeds toxicity. It's a wonder that their two got married and stayed married for 15 years. Kerr delivers an apology to the Pride organisation and to the Japanese people themselves, and is allowed to fight once again. Things are different though. Without the drugs, it's much more of a challenge for him. After a lengthy, and I mean rocky length training montage, it's finally fight night again. This is a massive tournament, dubbed the Pride 200 Grand Prix. And Kerr's best friend Coleman is one of the opponents he may have to face if they make it through the preliminaries. Oh! But the two have absolutely no animosity towards each other. They're loving the spotlight and showing true friendship by being there for one another, whether it be Kerr's potential relapse or the fact that Coleman is about to hit his 50s in the next few years, making him one of the oldest fighters. An interesting behind the scenes fact, all the punches, including the ones to the face, were real for Dwayne Johnson. To fully immerse himself in the role, in the feeling, and because, well, he did wrestling back in the day, he's encouraged the others to really hit him. As the fight kicks off, Coleman and Kerr advance almost with ease. They advance to the finals along with Branco. But this means that Kerr and Coleman are definitely gonna have to go head to head. During one of their heated arguments, Dawn had smashed a bowl that Mark had brought back from Japan. Well, to make amends with him, she read up on the Japanese art of kintsugi, which is a technique that they use gold powder to stitch the ceramic and porcelain objects back together and present him with now a fixed bowl. I've seen that. It's beautiful what they do. It looks so good. I would deliberately break stuff in Japan just to get it fixed like that. He gets his head shaved, and okay, so The Rock is bald, and I did expect him to start looking like himself now. But whatever they did to change the shape of his face, he still doesn't look like The Rock. Well, Dawn, of course, once again gets super upset because Mark's manager and others suggest that she stays home when Mark heads back to Japan, because he needs to focus and can't have any distractions. This is the biggest fight of his life, a lot of money on the line. She takes it to mean she wants to fuck around or doesn't love her anymore. She takes it personally and blows up at him. This once again ends up in a huge shouting match, and while Kerr holds it in as long as he can, he smashes a cabinet and unloads on her about how hard his recovery is, how hard it is to get back into the spotlight, and how she's never satisfied. She tries goading him into hitting her, oh my god. And that's when it hits him. He just sighs and walks away and tells her to stay home because for once it's not about you. He tells her to leave and suddenly she tries to turn it around, saying they're about to have a party and they can just talk about it tomorrow. And he's just done with it. He packs a bag and gets out. Dawn instead grabs a gun and threatens to shoot herself. And Jesus, this is getting worse every second longer this goes on. She tries locking herself in the bathroom and to cut her wrist to take a bunch of pills, and he breaks the door down and hugs her tight. And she screams at him, she hates him and just wants to end it all. This all just spiraled out of control. He calls the police after calming her down, and they take her to a mental health clinic. And then he packs his bag and heads to Japan. As good as a fighter he is, no matter what, in a long multi-bracket tournament, one downside is that other fighters can watch you, study your moves and prepare a defensive strategy. Something the first fights don't have an advantage with. I mean, it's kind of like Dragon Ball Z. Goku watches his friends get their asses kicked, so by the time he steps in, he's got a pretty good idea on how his opponents operate, letting him get that swift victory, but it still doesn't diminish his capability as a fighter. I remember playing things like Mortal Kombat or Dead or Alive back in the day and would watch the combos my friends would use and then plan out my own attacks in response to that. Well, Coleman goes on to win his semi-final, but Kerr, he loses it. Legitimately this time. Everything that has happened to him up until this point weighed him down, and like a boulder he was unable to move out in that ring and just took a beating and lost. But you know what? Kerr is right back out there in Coleman's corner, cheering on his friend with the biggest smile and fist raised high. Now that's a spirit, and that's sportsmanship, and that's friendship. The movie ends here, but this isn't actually where his career ended, as Kerr returned in 2004 to fight again, eventually marrying Dawn, having a son and then divorcing her, retiring and becoming a car salesman for Toyota, all with a smile on his face and a gentle disposition. And that wraps it up. What a film, what a performance. I mean, it's a slice of life kind of film, putting together a few small pieces to give us a glimpse of the life of this man. But that doesn't mean it explored everything about him either, and so I definitely recommend reading up on him because he did some incredible things, but also hit some incredible lows. Big props to both The Rock and especially Emily Blunt, who went full on crazy in this film, and yet it felt realistic. Like, I know some people who are just like this. I give the film a 7 out of 10. Some bonus point for the outstanding cast, but the film definitely could have used a little more focus. A little more smoothing out the rough edges and less about the actual fights and more about the aftermaths. We've seen hundreds of training montages in these kinds of films. We know it's tough. Addiction or no addiction. And at this point it feels like filler when these films do them. Otherwise, an enjoyable watch and definitely worth checking out. I want to thank you all for coming and checking out this video. What did you think of the film? Are you a fan of MMA? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed our content, please give us a like, share and subscribe to the channel. And if you are on mobile, please click that hype button. And don't forget to knock out the bell icon to stay up to date with all our latest releases. Thank you for being here with me today, everyone. I hope you all have the most beautiful day. Take care and goodbye. It's a one fucking fly.